Okay, good morning. Roger Botten, Chair of the Student Attendance Advisory Committee meeting, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Oh, yes. It's 9:20. So first item, 1.02, roll call.
Jason Trevino. Jason Trevino, present.
I'm present.
Thank you. Roger Botten.
Oh, present.
Carrie Pruitt.
Present.
Lacey Keeley. Charles Aglebat.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 2.01, approval of the minutes of January 7th. If you want to take a minute, look over those minutes.
Carrie Pruitt, for the record, I move to approve the minutes.
Can I get a second?
This is Jason. I'll second.
This is Charles Aglebat.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Oh, wait.
Is there any public comment on the agenda? Oh, minutes.
Negative.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No.
Charles,
Oh.
are you voting, Charles? I couldn't see you or hear you.
Yes, I said aye.
Okay.
All right. 2.02, presentation discussion on current chronic absenteeism data.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. I will do my best to be concise today. I wanted to, as I do very often, present to you our current chronic absenteeism rates here in Washoe County School District, so you're aware of where we're at. We currently are at 21% chronically absent in our district. So that's about 11,000 students that are chronically absent. Just to remind you, the definition of chronically absent is missing 10% or more of the days that you're enrolled in school. So that fluctuates over time depending on how many days you've missed and how many days you're enrolled. This is still down significantly from last year. We were at a total of 39%. Up here on big, it shows 37.55, but we were reporting a total of 39% chronically absent last year. We have been fluctuating around 19 to 21% all year long. So when we break it down, we also are showing that of those students that are chronically absent, about 7% of them are currently severely chronically absent. So that means they're missing 20% or more of the days that they're enrolled in school. So attendance issues are kind of staying the same. They're ticking up just a little bit. I apologize, Jason, you can't see this, but Charles, I think you can. Can you see the big data up here?
Yes, this is Charles Aglebat. I am able to see it.
Okay, so you can see it's kind of been normal, or not normal, but it's kind of just stayed about the same all year long. When you're looking at this data right here, the combined black line is chronic and severe combined. The yellow is students that are chronically absent, and the red is severely chronically absent. We're seeing that number tick up a little bit over this last couple of months. We've also got some extenuating circumstances around transportation. You all may be aware that we have blackout weeks now. Our transportation department is impacted by the lack of drivers. They're currently down, I think the director told me, about 90 drivers right now. So they've been trying to brainstorm how do we continue to transport students, and they have done blackout weeks where students don't receive busing for a week. schools have done an amazing job of trying to brainstorm and figure out how do we continue to support students. Sometimes students, when they're living in the zone, live in strange areas and zones, and they live far away and need buses and need transportation. And so, for example, Lois Allen, the dean there, shared that she called every student that took a bus the week before and brainstormed with parents, what can we do? How can we support? And so out of all the students that were impacted by transportation, only 3 were unable to make it that week. And then schools do have an option of providing temporary distance learning during that week, or provide materials for them to work at home, or when they return the following week, they can return. So students aren't punished for missing during the week that there is no transportation. We're looking now at what our chronic absenteeism rates look like based on special populations and race and ethnicity. You can see that our Pacific Islander students and our African American students are most impacted by attendance. For those of you that are not familiar yet with our special populations, FRL is our free and reduced lunch. Those are students that are living in poverty. IEP are students that are receiving special education services. EL are English learners. CIT are students that qualify as being homeless. GT are gifted and talented population, and then our foster. So you see our students that are homeless have the greatest impact in terms of attendance right now. That's typical, but this is even more significant as it is in sort of average years. And then when we look at grades, this is also typical too. We typically see students in pre-K, kindergarten struggle that dips down around 3rd, 4th grade, and then it increases as students get older. Our 12th graders are always the most chronically absent, and they're always the most severely chronically absent. There's a lot of reasons behind that. We've talked about that in this committee before. Sometimes students drop out because they need to work and make ends meet. And so there's a lot of reasons why students are missing at 12th grade, but this is kind of typical. It's just significantly higher than it is during an average year. Any questions about where we're at currently with chronic absenteeism? Okay, that's all I got for that one.
Okay, well, we have 2.03 presentation discussion on Washoe County School District transportation reductions and the impacts on students.
I kind of went off on that already. So
Yeah.
just gonna add, I know that schools are doing a lot. We put out a memo to school principals regarding attendance. Students are not punished for missing school during because they don't have a bus transportation that week. There are also bus hubs that we've tried to help with transportation, so that they can continue to get kids to school. And so, they're doing their best to try to see how they can support. There are populations that are exempt from those blackouts, and those are typically, for the most part, not in every case, students that are receiving special education services, students that are homeless, and students that are in foster care are continuing to receive buses when possible. That's not always possible, but for the most part, I think, Carrie, you all have figured out transportation for foster for the most part. I don't think there's a ton of students that didn't receive buses when they normally did.
Carrie Pruitt for the record. Yes, I had wanted to, on behalf of Washoe County Human Services, our foster parents, and our workers too, just thank the district for their efforts in transporting our foster kiddos. I want to say there's only a handful of kids that they couldn't find a bus for, which is quite amazing given the conditions and the loss and the lack of drivers. During the blackout weeks, our foster kids do have a slightly different route, so they have to kind of regroup during those weeks. But it's better than not having a bus. So we're adjusting to the times, and it's just, we appreciate, our population being considered, and just continue to get them to school. So thank you.
Any questions on the blackout weeks, the transportation challenges? I know our district has worked really hard to try to recruit more bus drivers and get more folks in place. And it's just, it's sort of unfortunate that right now we're kind of in this position where we just don't have enough bus drivers. 90 people are a lot of people to not have in place. So they are trying their best. No other questions? Okay.
Okay, 2.04, presentation discussion of Washoe County School District Student Attendance Review Boards held for 21-22 school year to date.
Okay, so most of you are familiar with the Student Attendance Review Board. We start this usually October. Student Attendance Review Board is asking the school district to investigate and address attendance for students that are chronically absent. It's in Nevada Revised Statute. So we hold these hearings. We do them for elementary school every Wednesday afternoon and for middle and high school every Thursday all day long. It's an interdisciplinary group. It includes counseling. It includes myself. It includes Washoe County Juvenile Services, Washoe County Human Services Agency. We have some other agencies that provide support too in terms of like Children's Cabinet, and we come together collaboratively with the school staff, with the parent and the student, except for in elementary, we don't typically have a student present, but in high school we do. And we talk together as a group addressing what are the issues around attendance, what is causing the attendance issues, and what supports can we put into place to address those and improve attendance. So it's a collaborative meeting with families. We develop that plan, and then after that, we assign a case manager for 45 days. That person works together with the school and the parent and the student to follow through with the recommendations and the plan that we developed during the meeting. And we wanted to look closer at the students that were coming to us. Who are the students that are coming to us? Trying to understand why they come to us. Roger and I have these conversations a lot about who is coming to Student Attendance Review Board. NRS is asks our schools to be mindful of attendance and look into when students are chronically absent. So we do have attendance officers that do that. We have 10 currently that help schools to investigate or look into and better understand why there are attendance issues with students at schools. And then when we have attempted 3 interventions at a school, we've put a student on a formal attendance monitor through an attendance officer. If we're not successful, then we move forward with SARB. And so I wanted to present to you all sort of what we were seeing last year with students and who we intervened with and who came to us. It's interesting data, and I just got it from our student accountability office this morning at 4:30. So I'm looking at it sort of with you guys too. I looked at it early this morning, but you see that most of the students that we served last year through SARB were in middle school. We actually don't see students typically for 11th and 12th grade. We usually see students 1st grade through 10th grade. And we don't see students that are under the age of 7. Schools require for students between the age of 7 and 18. So we don't typically see them, although we do have schools sometimes that say, can you please meet with this family? I think this family would benefit from additional services. And so sometimes we see students that are not within our age range just so that we can be a support to the family. This is not typically or isn't a punitive sort of meeting. It's meant to put resources and support in place for families. So you see that 21% of them were in 8th grade, which is kind of interesting to me. Stop me if you have questions. Most of them, so the green is our students that we saw through SARB, and the teal blue and the other green on the right hand side is the school district as a whole. So you see we saw fewer females that's typical in the district, but more males were represented in our SARB. We saw an overrepresentation of Latinx population in our SARB cases, and then we have Black and African American, which is also overrepresented in, and our white Caucasian students were underrepresented in SARB based on the average in the school district. You can see that the vast majority of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. So 91% of the students that we saw are FRL students. And then we saw a few CIT and then English learners. And then we saw quite a few, 42% of them were students that were receiving special education services. And that broke that down into what kinds of what kind of diagnosis they had. Go ahead.
I was just saying that it might be interesting to see how these numbers compare with disciplinary data and looking at disproportionality within the.
Yeah, she is pulling all of that. So we'll dive a little bit deeper in this too, so you can see how many of those students had suspensions, because I think all of that impacts the students' attendance and engagement as well. So we'll look at that too. I do want to point out here, so these are SBAC, or our English Language Arts achievement levels for students. And so for those students that came through SARB, the vast majority of them scored a level 1, which is minimal understanding. It's below grade level with ELA. And then even more concerning, I'm going to go through this, is math. 75% of them scored a level 1 minimal understanding. So we typically, when we're looking at our students coming through SARB, this is not the first time they've been chronically absent. They've usually had years of being chronically absent, and so they have large gaps in their education. And so we see that in their SBAC, especially in math, for our students. So none of our students were advanced, and only 9% were proficient in math. So that's concerning, because we know the students that are coming to us that are absent are struggling in school, really struggling.
Carrie Pruitt, for the record,
Yeah.
I just want to add too that I think it'd be interesting to compare these numbers to pre-COVID, because what we found with our foster kiddos, and I assume it's probably similar across the board, is that math is the one thing that, as we all know, is difficult to accomplish, to learn via distance. And so we have kids that were behind, now they're more behind. Based on kind of just the dynamics of COVID. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, we are definitely seeing an increase in the referrals coming. So we're seeing probably an average, Dodie, I think probably 10, 12 referrals a week right now, which is pretty significantly higher than we typically do. Typically we see 5, 6 a week. So we're seeing double the referrals. Now we're seeing a reduction in ESARB. We're seeing fewer elementary schools asking for ESARBs, but quite a significant increase in middle and high school. Okay, so these are just looking at SBACs again. So on average, SARB students were absent 48% of the school days. So they're missing nearly half of the school year when they're coming to us, which makes it really hard. I mean, attendance we're trying to change something that we don't have control over. And a lot of times it's things that are happening in the home, or these large academic gaps that take a long time for us to address. And so attendance there's no magic wand to help with attendance. It takes a long time, especially when we're working with students that are in high school that are credit deficient, and working on engagement and making them feel a part of the school community and feeling successful. These are the suspensions. She did pull that. So it looks like about 8% had been suspended one or more times last year. So not terrible, but significantly higher than what the population is in Washoe County School District, because that was at 2%. Okay, so we won't go through all that. Okay, any questions?
Carrie Pruitt, for the record, I just wanted to, on the like the third or fourth slide where you broke out CIT and ELL, I was wondering if Foster, because I know that it's taken time to pull Foster out of the CIT data.
Yeah.
Is Foster included in that? Yep.
Where
You had it
did it go?
right there.
Oh. She hasn't yet. So I did ask her to do that, but she hasn't. She just started pulling this data last week. And so I do think though these are SARB students from last year, but the sample size is probably fairly small. So this is a total of 146 students. But of those that are foster, we'll have to look to see how many are foster, because I don't know that data is going to be super reflective, because we might have small numbers that are actually foster, but we can look at it.
Okay, thanks.
This is something that we want to continue to look at. We'll look at this year's too, and I'll be able to report that to you all. And if there are other areas like you want to look closer at foster, let me know, because I'm interested in looking more closely and diving deep into who are we serving. And then we do want to look a little bit more at outcomes for our students. And so we've in general looked at outcomes, and we do have and typically do see about for SARB students about 60% of them see an improvement in attendance when we're case managing them. Once we close cases though, that attendance drops again. So we don't have good long-term outcomes. We have better long-term outcomes for elementary school, and about 75% of them increase in attendance or improve in attendance, but again, not good long-term.
Roger Botten, for the record. I found that a little concerning that we've had a drop in referrals for elementary. How big of a drop? Do you have an idea on that?
I'll have to look back, Roger, but it's pretty significant because, I mean, I'm just off at the top of my head and I don't have the numbers. We typically we're seeing 3 a week. We haven't scheduled an ESARB in several weeks. So.
Yeah, and we had just met yesterday
Yeah.
to try to discuss some things, but I didn't know that it had dropped significantly. So
Yeah,
we'll
I'll look back.
into that.
I'll compare the numbers from last year to this year. We're not done yet this year, so I don't have complete numbers, but I'll be able to give you a sense of what we're seeing in terms of ESARBs. Any other questions? Okay.
All right, 3.01, public comment.
We received one public comment email from Joe Morabito.
And then no others. All right, then 3.02, our next meeting is going to be held June 10th, 2022, 9 a.m. And up here, I assume. All right, if there is anything else, 3.03, I'd like to thank everyone and adjourn the meeting.